The clock on Hyunmak Hwang's desk read 5:47 a.m. He stood alone in the gathering dawn, bathed in cold blue light. The only illumination in the $20 million Seoul penthouse came from the rising sun bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across marble floors. 63 floors below, the city was waking. Delivery trucks navigating narrow streets, early commuters shuffling toward subway stations, street vendors setting up for the morning rush. But up here, the silence pressed against him like an accusation. Hyunmak faced the windows, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders rigid beneath his tailored black suit jacket. His white dress shirt was crisp, perfectly pressed, but the top button hung undone, a small crack in an otherwise flawless facade. Across his reflection in the glass, stress lines fractured his face like spider-webbed porcelain. Each line was a price paid, a consequence of building an empire that demanded perfection. He glanced at his phone for the 6th time in 15 minutes. No messages. The Busan deal was dead. Behind him, barely audible, came the soft click of the kitchen door. Young-hain entered like smoke, silent, unhurried, existing in the margins of his awareness. She moved to the espresso machine with practiced efficiency, her long black hair pulled back, her black formal dress blending into the pre-dawn shadows. Her face showed nothing, no concern, no curiosity, no judgment. She had prepared his breakfast at precisely 6 a.m. for 5 years. She knew his schedule better than he did. Hyunmak didn't turn around. He never did. She was furniture, necessary, invisible. What he couldn't see, the phone screen illuminated briefly in her hand as she set down his coffee. Evidence log, day 1847, glowed in white text before the screen went dark. Young-hain's expression remained perfectly neutral, but her thumb hovered over a folder labeled Busan Port, Minseok, 4:32 a.m. She knew why his empire was collapsing. She had known for 1,847 days, and she had said nothing. By 7 a.m., Hyunmak sat at the head of his dining table, scanning 3 tablets at once. On the left screen, occupancy rates for his hotel chain across Seoul, Busan, and Jeju Island. Center screen, real estate portfolios, luxury apartments, commercial buildings, waterfront properties worth hundreds of millions. Right screen, encrypted messages from contacts he would never acknowledge in daylight. Young-hain refilled his coffee without being asked. She moved like water around stone, anticipating his needs before he voiced them. He didn't look up. He never did. The penthouse phone rang. Hyunmak answered on the second ring. The Shanghai investors are confirmed for Thursday. Minseok's voice came through, smooth and efficient. I've arranged the private room at Yungsik. Security will sweep it twice before arrival. Good. Hyunmak's tone was flat, final. What about the Incheon situation? Handled. The shipment cleared customs at 4 a.m. No issues. Minseok had been his second in command for 8 years. Former military intelligence, strategically brilliant, ruthlessly loyal. Or so Hyunmak believed. See, Minseok managed the operations that existed in the gray spaces between legal and illegal, the shipments that moved through ports after midnight, the cash that flowed through shell companies, the meetings that happened in basements instead of boardrooms. I want a full report by noon, Hyunmak said, already on your desk. Hyunmak ended the call. Efficiency, control, precision. These were the pillars that held his empire upright. He had built this life brick by brick, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. Nothing happened in his world without his approval. Nothing moved without his knowledge. At 8:30 a.m., his driver arrived. Young-hain appeared with his briefcase and coat, both prepared exactly as he required. She handed them over without a word, her eyes lowered, her expression neutral. Hyunmak took them and walked toward the elevator. He didn't say goodbye. He never did. She had worked in his home for 5 years. He had never asked her name. When he needed her, he simply called out, "You," or gestured with his hand. She responded. That was enough. The morning proceeded like clockwork. Meetings with construction executives, calls with hotel managers, lunch with a city councilman who owed him 3 favors. By 2 p.m., Hyunmak was back in his office, a corner suite on the 48th floor of a building he owned. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, encrypted message. Someone in your circle is bleeding you dry. Trust no one. Check the accounts yourself. Hyunmak stared at the screen. His jaw tightened. His fingers went still. He read it again, then a third time. He deleted the message and set the phone face down on his desk. But his hand remained on it, pressing down as if he could crush the words into silence. Outside his office, the city continued its rhythm. Inside, something had shifted, a hairline crack in the foundation, a whisper of doubt where certainty used to live. Hyunmak opened his laptop and began pulling financial records he hadn't personally reviewed in months, numbers he had trusted Min Seok to manage. The first seed of paranoia took root. 5 years earlier, Young Hein had a different life. She sat in a gray cubicle on the 14th floor of Daehan Industries, reviewing quarterly reports with the precision of a surgeon. Senior accountant, 7 years with the company. A small apartment in Mapo district, a routine that felt safe, predictable, boring in the best possible way. Then the takeover came. Huang Consolidated Enterprises made an offer Daehan's board couldn't refuse, or rather an offer designed to look generous while slowly suffocating the company from within. Within 6 months, Daehan Industries was gutted, assets stripped, departments dissolved, 1,200 employees received termination notices on the same gray Tuesday morning. Young Hein was one of them. The severance package barely covered 2 months of rent. Job applications disappeared into silence. Her savings evaporated. Then her landlord sold the building and the new owners doubled the rent. She moved to a smaller place, then a smaller one. Then she was choosing between groceries and electricity bills. Desperation makes people do things they never imagined. The agency listing appeared on her phone at 11 p.m. On a Wednesday, live-in house manager for private residence, $4,000 monthly, discretion required, references checked. The pay was suspicious. The vague description was suspicious. But her bank account had $287 left. She applied. 3 days later, she stood in Hyunmak Hwang's penthouse for the first time, being interviewed by an HR manager who asked strange questions. Can you work in silence? Do you have family who will ask about your employer? Are you comfortable with irregular hours? Young Hein said yes to everything. She needed the job more than she needed answers. The first weeks, she moved through the penthouse like a ghost, learning his patterns. Morning coffee at 6 a.m., breakfast at 7 a.m. He left by 8:30 a.m. and returned between 6 p.m. and midnight, depending on meetings. He never spoke to her except to give instructions. He never looked directly at her. She studied him the way an accountant studies numbers, looking for inconsistencies, patterns, weaknesses. She planned her revenge quietly, carefully. The man who destroyed her life didn't even know her name. Then, on day 83, everything changed. It was 1:30 a.m. Young Hein was in the kitchen, restocking supplies from a late delivery. She heard voices in Hyunmak's office, the door slightly open, unusual for that hour. Min Seok's voice, low and tense. Transferred another $2.8 million through the Cayman account. He'll never check the subsidiary records himself. Young Hein froze. 3 years, and he hasn't noticed a single discrepancy. As long as the top-line numbers match. Her accountant's mind started calculating immediately. 2.8 million. And 3 years, subsidiary records. That wasn't normal business, that was embezzlement. She set down the supplies silently and moved closer. When the time comes, we'll have enough to bury him completely. The prosecutors already have the shell companies flagged. Jung Hein's heart pounded, but her hands stayed steady. She pulled out her phone and opened a new note. Evidence log, day 1. She typed quickly, Min Seok, 1:34 a.m. office. Cayman account transfer $2.8 million, 3-year timeline, mentions prosecutors. She came here to destroy Hyunmak Hwang. But Min Seok was planning something bigger, something that would hurt more than just one man. And Jung Hein realized with cold clarity, the enemy of her enemy wasn't her friend. He was a bigger threat. The Busan port deal died at 4:32 a.m. on a Thursday. Hyunmok's phone erupted with calls. Customs had raided the warehouse. Federal investigators were on site. The entire shipment, $47 million in electronics disguising something far more valuable, was seized. Partners were being arrested. Accounts were being frozen. Someone had talked. By 6 a.m., Hyunmok's penthouse had transformed into a war room. Min Seok arrived with 2 security specialists who swept every room for listening devices. They checked phones, computers, even the light fixtures. Hyunmok stood at the windows, hands clenched behind his back, watching the sun rise over a city that suddenly felt hostile. "It was an inside tip," Min Seok said, his voice tight. "Someone gave them the exact timing, the exact location. They knew too much. Then find out who." Hyunmok's voice was ice. "I want names by tonight." Jung Hein moved through the chaos like smoke, and refilling coffee, clearing dishes, existing in the background. She listened to every word. She watched Min Seok's performance, the concerned lieutenant, the loyal soldier, the man pretending to search for a traitor while being the traitor himself. Her phone was in her pocket. She would update the log later. The interrogations began that afternoon. Hyunmok brought in every person who had access to the Busan operation: drivers, warehouse managers, low-level enforcers. He questioned them personally, his voice cold and surgical, looking for the crack in their stories. But the guilty man sat beside him the entire time, taking notes. Days passed, then a week. Hyunmok stopped sleeping properly. Jung Hein could see it in the way he moved, slower, heavier, his shoulders tight with exhaustion. The stress fractures on his face deepened. His suits were still perfect, his routine still precise, but something underneath was bending. On day 1850, Jung Hein prepared his morning coffee exactly as she had for 5 years. Double espresso, no sugar, ceramic cup preheated to 70 degrees Celsius. She set it on his desk. Hyunmok took 1 sip and slammed the cup down. Coffee splashed across the marble surface. "This is cold," he snapped, his eyes finally meeting hers, the first time in weeks. "How do you work here for 5 years and still get it wrong?" Jung Hein looked at him. The coffee wasn't cold. She had checked the temperature herself, but she didn't argue. She simply bowed her head slightly, took the cup, and returned to the kitchen. She remade it. Same temperature, same process. Brought it back without a word. Hyunmok didn't apologize. He took the cup and turned back to his laptop as if she had already disappeared. Jung Hein returned to her small room off the kitchen. She pulled out her phone and opened the evidence log. Day 1850. Subject's baseline stress response escalating. First direct anger directed at non-threat personnel. Control patterns deteriorating. Min Seok continues daily contact, now positioning himself as primary investigator of breach he orchestrated. Subject shows no awareness. She paused, then added one more line. Collapse timeline, accelerating. Jung Hein saved the entry and closed her phone. Through the wall, she could hear Hyunmok on another call, his voice sharp and demanding. A man trying to hold an empire together while the ground beneath him turned to sand. She knew exactly who was digging, and she said nothing. The raid happened on a Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. Federal agents stormed Hyunmok's headquarters on Tehran Row, armed with warrants and camera crews. They seized computers, files, hard drives. By noon, news helicopters circled the building. By evening, his face was on every screen in Seoul. The evidence they found was damning. Shell companies in 3 countries, falsified tax documents, digital transfers that painted a clear picture of large-scale money laundering. The investigators called it a textbook criminal enterprise hidden behind legitimate business. What they didn't know, every piece of evidence had been planted 6 months earlier by the man Hyunmok trusted most. Min Seok had built the frame with surgical precision, forged emails with Hyunmok's digital signature, bank records showing transfers Hyunmok never authorized. Witnesses, warehouse managers, accountants, low-level employees who suddenly remembered meetings that never happened, instructions they never received. Min Seok had paid some, threatened others. Each piece fit together like a puzzle designed to cage one man. By Wednesday, Hyunmok's legitimate business partners began cutting ties. Hotel chains canceled contracts. Real estate investors pulled funding. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. The lawyers he called said the same thing. "This looks very bad. We need time." Time was the one thing Hyunmok didn't have. The media fed on him. Strategic leaks appeared in newspapers and online, details only someone inside his operation could know. Sources close to the investigation described a criminal empire that had operated for over a decade. Some of it was true. Most of it was exaggerated. All of it was devastating. While Hyunmok's world burned, Jung-hain worked in silence. She witnessed Min Seok's late-night visits to the penthouse, meetings in Hyunmok's office when Hyunmok wasn't home. She watched through the crack in the door as Min Seok rifled through files, photographed documents, made calls in low voices. On day 1862, he left a folder on the desk for 7 minutes while he took a call in the hallway. Jung-hain moved like a shadow. She used her phone to photograph every page, bank statements, transfer receipts, handwritten notes in Min Seok's writing. Then she put everything back exactly as he'd left it. She had learned the penthouse security system months ago, the cameras, the monitoring setup Hyunmok thought only he could access. She rerouted recordings to a separate drive, capturing Min Seok's meetings frame by frame, audio files saved with timestamps, his voice describing exactly how he'd built the frame. "The prosecutors already have the doctored files. He'll never prove they're fake." Jung-hain built her countercase the way she used to build financial reports, methodical, comprehensive, unbreakable. Every piece of evidence cross-referenced, every conversation logged, every document traced back to its source. She worked in the margins of Hyunmok's collapsing empire, invisible and essential, watching the trap close while documenting the hand that set it. By Friday, Hyunmok's lawyer called with worse news. Criminal charges were likely within the week. Asset seizure was imminent. His empire, built over 15 years, was being dismantled in 15 days. Hyunmok stood at his penthouse windows, looking down at the city that had once felt like his. Now it felt like a prison with the walls closing in. Jung-hain set his evening tea on the table. He didn't acknowledge her. She returned to her room and updated the log. Day 1867. Frame complete. Subject unaware primary threat operates from within trusted circle. Net tightening. Estimated timeline to full collapse, 72 hours. The truth was buried in her phone, and still she said nothing. The exodus began on Monday. Hyunmok's business associates stopped returning calls. Partners who had smiled at him across conference tables now claimed they never knew about his illegal activities. Drivers quit. Security personnel found new jobs overnight. His personal chef sent a resignation email at 3 a.m. and disappeared. By Wednesday, his inner circle had shrunk to 5 people. Min Seok, and 2 loyal enforcers who had been with him since the beginning, his lawyer who charged $800 an hour, and Jung-hain. The penthouse felt larger, emptier. Sounds echoed differently. Hyunmok paced the marble floors at night, phone pressed to his ear, trying to stop the bleeding. But every call revealed another betrayal. An accountant had turned informant. A warehouse manager was cooperating with prosecutors. People he had trusted were trading his secrets for immunity deals. He trusted no one now. He suspected everyone. Even Min Seok, who arrived each morning with updates and strategies, earned sharp questions. "How do I know you're not talking to them?" Hyunmok asked one evening, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Min Seok didn't flinch. "Because everything I have is tied to you. If you fall, I fall." It was a perfect lie. And Hyunmok believed it. His health deteriorated in visible ways. The stress fractures on his face deepened into permanent lines. His suits hung looser. He had lost weight without noticing. He barely ate. Sleep came in fractured hours on the couch, never in his bed. Jung-hain would find him at dawn, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at financial statements. Through it all, Jung-hain maintained her routines with eerie calm. Breakfast appeared at 7 a.m. Rice, soup, banchan, green tea. Fresh clothes were laid out each morning. The penthouse remained pristine, every surface cleaned, every detail managed. While chaos consumed everything outside, Jung-hein created an island of order within the walls. She was the only staff member who remained. On day 1874, Hyunmak made a decision. It was 2 a.m. The penthouse was silent. He stood outside Jung-hein's door, the small room off the kitchen where she had lived for 5 years. He had never entered it, never thought about what was inside. Now, paranoia made him wonder. He opened the door quietly. The room was nearly empty. A single bed with white sheets, a small closet with 5 identical black dresses, a dresser with basic toiletries, no photographs, no books, no personal items of any kind. It looked like a room someone could leave in 5 minutes without looking back. Hyunmak stood in the doorway, searching for something, evidence, secrets, proof of betrayal. But there was nothing, just emptiness. He closed the door and returned to his office. It didn't occur to him that the emptiness itself was strange, that a woman who had lived somewhere for 5 years should have left some mark, some trace of personality. That invisibility this complete was a choice, not an accident. He saw the empty room and thought, she has nothing to hide. He didn't realize she was hiding everything. By Friday, the circle had shrunk even further. One enforcer took a deal. The lawyer said he could no longer represent Hyunmak due to ethical conflicts. That left 3 people, Min Seok, one loyal enforcer, and Jung-hein. Hyunmak sat in his penthouse at dusk, surrounded by enemies he couldn't see, trusting the man who was destroying him, ignoring the woman who held all the answers. The collapse was nearly complete. Hyunmak opened his personal safe at 11 p.m. on Saturday, looking for property deeds his lawyer needed. What he found instead made his blood go cold. Documents he had never seen before, contracts with his signature, but he had never signed them. Shipping manifests for weapons, rifles, ammunition, military-grade equipment, bank transfers to accounts in Libya, Syria, Yemen, dates going back 3 years. He pulled out page after page, his hands shaking. Every document implicated him in international arms dealing. Every signature looked perfect. Every detail was precise. This wasn't just money laundering. This was enough to put him away for life. Someone had planted this in his own safe. Someone with access to his penthouse, his codes, his life. Hyunmak's mind spiraled. Min Seok had the codes. The enforcer had been in the penthouse countless times. Even Jung-hein, invisible, silent Jung-hein, had access to every room. He stormed out of his office. Min Seok was gone for the night. The enforcer was downstairs. That left one person. Hyunmak found Jung-hein in the kitchen, on preparing his late dinner. She stood at the counter with a knife in her hand, slicing vegetables with mechanical precision. Her back was to him, her movements calm and rhythmic. "Stop," he said. Jung-hein turned slowly, the knife still in her hand. Her expression was neutral, unreadable. "Are you part of this?" Hyunmak's voice was raw. "Did someone pay you? Are you working with them?" She looked at him. Just looked. Didn't defend herself. Didn't protest her innocence. Didn't even seem surprised by the accusation. For the first time in 5 years, Hyunmak truly met her eyes. They were dark, calm, and completely unafraid. He realized with sudden, crushing clarity, he knew nothing about this woman. Not her full name, not where she came from, not what she thought about, not whether she hated him or pitied him or felt nothing at all. She had lived in his home for 5 years, and she was a complete stranger. "Get out," he said. "Pack your things and leave. Tonight." Jung-hein set down the knife carefully. She wiped her hands on a towel. Then she spoke, her voice quiet and even. "Where would I go? I don't care. This is my job," she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "I prepare your meals. I maintain your home. That's what I do. If you want me to leave, you'll have to call security to remove me." Her calm was worse than anger, worse than fear. It was absolute and unshakable, and it terrified him. "Why are you still here?" Hyunmak demanded. Everyone else ran. Everyone else is trying to save themselves. Why haven't you? Young-hein tilted her head slightly, studying him the way someone might study an interesting problem. Because, she said simply, I have nowhere else to be. She picked up the knife again and returned to cutting vegetables, dismissing him without another word. Hyunmok stood in the kitchen doorway, watching this woman who had been invisible for 5 years suddenly become the most unsettling presence in his life. He had been looking for his enemies in boardrooms and back alleys. He had suspected everyone except the people closest to him. His blindness, he realized, might have been his greatest vulnerability, and the woman who knew everything was still saying nothing. At 3 a.m., Yeonmok stood outside Young-hein's door again. This time, he didn't hesitate. He opened it and stepped inside. The room was dark. He used his phone's flashlight to navigate. Young-hein was gone. He had heard her leave an hour ago for her weekly supply run, a routine she maintained even as his world collapsed. He searched the closet first. 5 black dresses, nothing else. Then the dresser. Basic toiletries. No hidden compartments. Under the bed, his fingers found something solid, a laptop case. Hyunmok pulled it out and sat on the floor. He opened the laptop. No password. The screen illuminated his face in the darkness. The desktop was organized into folders by year: 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Each folder contained subfolders: financial records, photographs, audio files, timeline analysis, subject profiles. Hyunmok clicked on financial records. Spreadsheets appeared, hundreds of them, meticulously organized, color-coded, every transaction tracked, categorized, cross-referenced, shell company transfers highlighted in red, embezzlement patterns mapped across 3 years, and every single discrepancy traced back to one name, Min Seok. The numbers told a story: $47 million diverted over 36 months, falsified reports, corrupted accounts, a systematic operation designed to bleed Hyunmok's empire while building evidence to destroy him. Hyunmok's hands shook as he opened the photographs folder. Images of Min Seok in Hyunmok's office, late at night, rifling through files, screenshots of forged documents with timestamps showing when they were created, pictures of meetings with prosecutors, with competitors, with people Hyunmok had never seen. The audio files folder contained dozens of recordings. Hyunmok clicked one at random. Min Seok's voice: transferred another $2.8 million through the Cayman account. He'll never check the subsidiary records himself. Another file: the prosecutors already have the shell companies flagged. When we move, it'll be fast. Another: he trusts me completely. That's his weakness. Hyunmok felt like he was falling. He opened subject profiles, files on everyone in his organization: Min Seok, the enforcers, business partners. Each profile detailed habits, vulnerabilities, loyalties, clinical, precise, ruthless. Then he found a file labeled simply Subject. Hyunmok opened it. Pages of observations about him, his routines, his blind spots, his weaknesses, notes written in detached analytical language like a scientist studying an animal. One entry stopped him. Day 127. Subject still doesn't know my name. Has called me you for 4 months. Doesn't matter. The work continues. Hyunmok read it 3 times. He scrolled through years of entries. Day 200. Subject's trust in Min Seok appears absolute. Day 456. Subject dismisses household staff as irrelevant to operations. Exploitable. Day 891. Subject's paranoia increasing, but misdirected. Every observation was correct. Every weakness he thought was hidden had been documented. The invisible woman had seen everything. More than that, she had been building the case he desperately needed. Evidence that could prove Min Seok's betrayal. Proof that the frame-up was orchestrated from within. Everything organized, time-stamped, ready to present. She had his same strategic brilliance. She had always had it. He just never looked. The sound of the front door opening made him freeze. Footsteps in the hallway, quiet, deliberate. Jung Hein appeared in the doorway. She held grocery bags in both hands. Her eyes moved from Hyunmak to the laptop on the floor, then back to his face. She set down the bags slowly. "You found it," she said. It wasn't a question. Hyunmak stood slowly, the laptop still glowing between them. "Why didn't you speak?" His voice was hoarse. "You've had this evidence for years. You could have told me. You could have—" "No one would have believed me," Jung Hein interrupted, her tone flat and factual. "A house manager accusing your most trusted lieutenant. You would have fired me, or worse." She walked past him and sat on the edge of her bed, hands folded in her lap. Calm, controlled. "Silence gave me power," she continued. "You didn't see me. That meant I could see everything. If I had spoken too early, Min-seok would have known. He would have destroyed the evidence. Changed his plans, I had to wait. Wait for what? For the moment you would have to listen." She looked directly at him. "For the moment when you had lost everything and had nowhere else to turn. That moment is now." Hyunmak felt like the floor was tilting beneath him. "You worked for Daehan Industries." "Yes, I destroyed that company. You lost your job because of me." "Yes, so this was revenge." Jung Hein shook her head slightly. "At first, maybe. I came here planning to find something, anything I could use to hurt you the way you hurt me. But then I discovered Min-seok. And I realized something." She paused. "You follow rules. Cruel rules, sometimes. But rules. Min-seok follows nothing. If he takes over your empire, hundreds more people will suffer. People like me." She stood and moved to the laptop, then scrolling through files with practiced ease. "He started embezzling 3 years ago," she explained, her voice taking on the precision of an accountant presenting a report. "Small amounts at first, then larger. He created shell companies in your name, falsified your signature on documents you never saw, built relationships with prosecutors, feeding them information while pretending to be loyal to you." She pulled up a timeline. 6 months ago, he planted the evidence that destroyed the Busan deal. 2 months ago, he arranged the raid on your headquarters, every move calculated to make you look guilty while positioning himself to take control. Why not go to the police yourself? Because you're not innocent either. Jung Hein's eyes were steady. The evidence clears you of what Min-seok planted. It doesn't erase what you actually did. I'm not saving you, I'm stopping him? Hyunmak stared at this woman who had prepared his breakfast for 5 years. "Who are you?" "Someone you never bothered to ask about." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Then Jung Hein's. Then the penthouse security alert. Someone was overriding the elevator access. Jung Hein's expression shifted for the first time, a flash of something sharp and cold. "He knows." "Min-seok? He's been monitoring your movements. If you're here in my room at 3 a.m., she closed the laptop quickly. "He knows I have evidence." The elevator dinged, footsteps in the hallway, multiple people, heavy boots. Min-seok's voice called out, calm and reasonable. "Hyunmak, we need to talk." Jung Hein and Hyunmak locked eyes. 3 years of silent documentation, 3 years of building an unbreakable case. And now Min-seok had arrived with armed men to destroy it all. Min-seok stepped into Jung Hein's small room, flanked by 3 armed men. His expression was calm, almost apologetic. "I wish it hadn't come to this," he said, looking at Hyunmak. Then his eyes shifted to Jung Hein. "Give me the laptop." Jung Hein didn't move. "You've been documenting me for 3 years," Min-seok continued. "Very thorough work, but it ends tonight." "No," Jung Hein said quietly. "It ended an hour ago." Min-seok's calm flickered. "What?" "The evidence isn't just on this laptop." Jung Hein's voice was steady, authoritative, nothing like the silent shadow she had been for 5 years. Copies were distributed to 3 separate law enforcement agencies at 2 a.m., financial records to the prosecutor's office, audio files to the police commissioner. On timeline analysis to the federal investigators already building a case against Hyunmak. She took a step forward. I also sent complete packages to 2 media organizations and 4 of your competitors, people who would very much like to know you've been stealing from them too. Min Seok's face went pale. And if I don't check in every 12 hours using a specific code, everything auto-releases to 15 additional contacts, including international authorities. Jung-hein tilted her head slightly. You can kill me, but you can't stop what's already in motion. For the first time, Hyunmok saw it clearly. She had his same tactical brilliance, the same ability to think 10 steps ahead, the same ruthless precision. She had always had it. He just never looked. Sirens echoed from the street below. Red and blue lights flickered through the windows. Min Seok's expression twisted. You called them? An hour ago, Jung-hein confirmed. I told them where to find you, what evidence to look for, and which of your men would cooperate for immunity. 2 already have. The elevator dinged again. Police flooded into the penthouse, armed, organized, moving with the confidence of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. Min Seok's men dropped their weapons without a fight. Within 20 minutes, Min Seok was in handcuffs. The conspirators were arrested. The evidence was catalogued, and Hyunmok stood in his penthouse, watching his second-in-command being taken away. The lead investigator approached him. Mr. Hwang, you'll need to come in for questioning. The evidence clears you of the planted charges. But there are other matters we need to discuss. Hyunmok understood. Jung-hein's evidence proved the frame-up. It didn't erase his actual crimes. He would face consequences, lose most of his empire, but he would survive. 6 months later, dawn broke over Seoul again. Hyunmok sat at his dining table, smaller now, in a smaller apartment. Most of his assets were gone, but he was free. Jung-hein sat across from him, drinking tea. The first time they had ever sat as equals. You're leaving, Hyunmok said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet, somewhere small. She set down her cup. Somewhere people don't see me. I never saw you, Hyunmok said. Not until I'd lost everything. Jung-hein's expression softened slightly. Most people don't see me, that's how I see everything. She stood. Hyunmok stood too. Or can I ask you something? He said. What's your name? Your full name? Jung-hein. He repeated it, tasting the syllables for the first time. 5 years. He had never asked. She walked to the door, then paused. You're not a good man, Hyunmok, but you're not the worst one either. That matters. Then she was gone. 3 weeks later, Jung-hein sat in a quiet community center in a neighborhood where no one knew her name. She opened her laptop at a corner table. New folder, new file, evidence log, day 1. She typed a single line. Subject operates youth shelter. Financials don't match reported donations. Possible diversion of funds. Jung-hein allowed herself a small smile. Some people's power was in being loud. Hers was in being overlooked, invisible, patient, waiting for the exact right moment to speak. And then speaking with precision that changed everything. She saved the file and closed the laptop. The silent woman's work continued.